I'm empty. I have leaks. I have holes in the soul. So I'm just going to fill it as fast as I can. That led to a place of us actually building a business that was valued at $70 million. That still wasn't enough, man. Like having that huge business, having the prestige and honor of my peers and flying private and having multiple houses and lake houses and mansions and all that kind of stuff. Welcome to the Good Steward Podcast. Chris Evans here. And I want to share my journey from building a $70 million consulting business to losing it all. Together, we're going to explore the lessons of loss, burnout, and redefining success, finding true peace, joy, and contentment along the way. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Good Steward Podcast. I am very excited about this podcast. This has been a long journey to get to this point. It's really been, I guess, 2 years that this has been in my head and been working on it more for the last year. This is an invitation for you to join along on my story, Johnny's story, who I'm going to introduce here in a minute. And I'm going to share a bit of my story in depth from climbing the mountain of success as we know it in the entrepreneurial world to an epic crash, an epic failure, and how that has been one of the greatest blessings and gifts that I could ever receive. Before we do that, though, I've got to introduce Johnny, my good friend and partner. He has agreed to be a part of this podcast. I appreciate him being here and helping with this and just being a part. So, Johnny, the people are most probably going to be like, where's Johnny from? It's not England. It's not Australia. He is from South Africa. And I did want to share just a bit more on you because you have been a part of this story. We connected about 2 years ago and immediately hit it off like brothers. Johnny has been successful in sales, marketing, and business growth. So I think that's important to point out that you're not just some guy, but there's a deep connection in your own processes and journey that you've gone through that you'll be sharing as well. Firstly, everyone, this is going to be an open book and we're going to share from that place and hopefully it can lead you to a better place in your life and your business. That's our intention. That's the goal. So with it being the Good Steward Podcast, that's where much of the journey has come from for me is I was all about success and whatever it took to get success, realizing that is an empty game. The question became, if that's not hope, then what could be the alternative? And my perspective is that is stewardship. And what I believe and what Johnny believes is that there is a God who loves us, created us for good works. And he's given all of us gifts and all of us abilities and all of us talents. And there's not one person on this earth like you that's listening. No one can do what you can do. And that is for a reason. That's a lot of the conversation we're going to have on this podcast. We're going to talk about identity and purpose and vision. We'll talk about business strategy things. We're going to get to the nitty gritty. Johnny, you want to add anything to that?
Chris, thank you for the introduction and thanks everyone for joining us, whether you're just starting out your entrepreneurial journey or you've already reached the top. Today's conversation will really give you some insights that might just change how you view success. So in today's episode, Chris will take us through where it all began, his rise to success, the hard lessons he learned along the way. And again, guys, as you hear the story unfold, you notice reflections that might resonate with your own journey. So without further ado, Chris, let's jump in. Can you take us back to the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey? What motivated you to start building these businesses?
Man, I was broke. I was financially broke. There was a point in 2012, I almost lost my house. So it was the first house we ever bought. I was a younger father. And the shame and stuff that came along that was very motivating for me to never, ever want to feel like that again. I felt like a failure. The things I'd done up to that point just didn't work out. I just had a lot of fear about that. And I wanted to make something of myself. I wanted people to see that I was valuable and worthy. And I wanted to elevate my status. And so I pursued any kind of opportunity I can. I think this is kind of like a common entrepreneurial story. It's like failure after failure, like you're just going for it. That was resemblant of my experience. I tried a lot of things and they didn't work until I found some things that did. And really blew up a huge business. But the problem was, even though I went from, quote, a failure to success, rags to riches kind of situation, internally, I was still broke. I was still empty. I had holes in my soul. And that was never something that I addressed until really the last few years, which has brought us to this point.
Thanks for sharing, man. Hearing that, it becomes clear how deeply these early struggles took a lot of input within your drive. And as if everyone reflects on the story, they'll begin to notice how much of our motivation can stem from wanting to feel valuable and avoid failure. What did success look like, Chris, to you during that time?
So myself and my former business partner, we were young and hungry, and it was all about, I think for me, getting as much as I can, as fast as I can, right? You think about, I don't know if you've ever tried to put water in a bucket that has holes, but that was like a good picture of me emotionally, mentally, and as it relates to building a business. It's like, I'm empty. I have leaks. I have holes in the soul. So I'm just going to fill it as fast as I can. That led to a place of us actually building a business that was valued at $70 million. That was a third-party valuation that we got. Getting to that place in a rather short amount of time, I think it was about 6 years from zero to that level. That still wasn't enough, man. Like having that huge business, having the prestige and honor of my peers, and flying private, and having multiple houses and lake houses and mansions and all that kind of stuff. Like in my mind, before I got to that place, that was success, because that's what I grew up around, like seeing that was success, and that's what people honored and elevated, and that's what my friends said. And it's just, norm in society. And I thought, okay, if I get that, I'll have a sense of security and a belonging. And again, like I said, the worth. So I got it. And I never felt really any of that. Like, yeah, of course there's a level of financial security that I felt, but not truly. Like I wasn't as worried about money, but at the end of the day, my decisions were still made based out of fear. I still worried. I still had insecurity. And what we all think success is, I think it's almost like an illusion, the mirage in the desert. Like you see it and you're going towards, it's like, oh, if I get to that thing, I drink from it, it's going to satisfy me. Hey, I want to jump in here real quick, take a break. This is a commercial. I want to plug the Good Steward Newsletter. It's a weekly letter that I write from me to you, entrepreneur, founder, owner, CEO, however you identify yourself. I talk a lot about my lessons, a lot about faith, family, business, of course, growing the big businesses, having huge failures. There's a lot that I break down and I share in that. And so I know that you'll get a lot of value out of it. chrisaevans.com/newsletter. Go check it out. So excited to see you in there and in my inbox. Well, I would argue that that's not really the case. Like, who is truly satisfied, from that thought of what success is? And that was definitely the case for me.
It's quite a journey. And I think a lot of the listeners definitely can relate to that. Can you describe a moment or a period, perhaps, when you realized that something wasn't right, despite your upward success as you just described it?
Yeah. I definitely had moments in the business. I would never really share this with anybody because it felt scary and dangerous. I don't know if this is right. I don't know that this feels right. I don't know if this is the right direction. Questioning, even in times when we had tremendous abundance in revenue and profit coming in, there just felt like a misalignment. So that was multiple times leading up to July 2021. I remember I just felt a whisper, maybe you should slow down, Chris. And so I actually started to read books about slowing down and living a slow life and living unhurried, because I was tired, man. At this point, 2021, we had been doing this for about 6 years, hard, like running hard. We had 15, 20,000 square feet of office space, 100 employees,
millions in revenue, just a lot going on. And so you'd think, man, yeah, this guy's got it figured out. But from like a tactical standpoint, a strategic standpoint, yeah, there's a lot of things that I had figured out, had developed the skill to build a big business at this point. But emotionally, spiritually, mentally, my health, I didn't have things figured out. And so all my identity was tied into that business and the success and the money. So the thought of slowing down, oh my God, dude, that terrified me. Even though if I was really honest to my true self, that's what I wanted. Like I wanted more emotional freedom. I wanted more freedom to say no to the push and to the treadmill I felt like I was on was a treadmill that I couldn't get off of. Like it just kept speeding up. That's what I felt like in so many ways. And I had less energy. I had less vision. I had less stamina. And it just seems like it became harder and harder to hold things together. And that so much of the success really became a burden. Because now I was at a place where people knew me for this. They knew me for Chris Evans, like the successful guy. And so I couldn't change that because then what would it mean about me, right? If I stepped down, stepped aside, slowed down. And yeah, that was difficult. And then I think really kind of the tipping point was when we got a letter from the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. They regulate all advertising, marketing in the United States. And basically it was a warning letter. And from the things that I experienced from a fear standpoint, scarcity standpoint, like I can't step aside, like that was almost like a pushing me. And it pushed me into a tailspin of like, oh my God, what if I lose this business because we can't market how we were and all these things that maybe we'll get to in another episode. And that just exasperated my unhealthy internal situation to a huge degree.
It sounds like quite a pivotal moment, especially taking into consideration the letter and not feeling that you can actually get off that treadmill. And also, I would guess, knowing what's at cost, right? A lot of people's lives and livelihoods.
Yep.
You mentioned the whispers to tell you to stop, right? I would imagine that you had experienced some form of burnout throughout the process.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think in that summer of 21, I was already experiencing that. So I'd actually experienced burnout in 2018 where I was pretty disassociated. I had never experienced it like that in my life. I have a pretty high pain tolerance and I can take on a lot. And so that can be great, but it's not great when you numb it and you try not to feel and you just avoid your limits as a human being. So that happened in 2018. I actually shut down a successful arm of the business because of that. And then coming into 2021, kind of starting to feel the same things. But again, at this point, we had built so much and I can't go backwards. I can't pull back. Like, how can I do that? And I just started feeling, again, disassociated. And then, of course, we got that letter. And it put me in such an it amplified my anxiety and depression, like stuff that I had for years that I never thought about, addressed. Like it was just underlined, always there. And that just like turned the volume of my anxiety and depression up to a place where my cortisol was jacked, my hormones were wrecked. I got blood work done and my doctor's like, dude, your testosterone is so low. I barely had any estrogen in my body, which is required for men, right? Like you need like all those things mentally and emotionally. I felt like I was in a pit of despair. I felt disillusioned, right? Because I had built all these things, but it felt like at this point it was taking away from me. It was taking things away from me. And there was a hopelessness that this thing was my hope. I put my hope in this business. I put my hope in this success and the platform and the status. And so being at a place where, oh my God, like I achieved it. Now I feel like I'm in a prison and I can't do more. I can't run faster. I can't go harder. then it was just like being in such a dark place of hopelessness. Like, if this isn't the answer, man, what do I have left? And it was just a breaking, a deep breaking. It started with my identity. I feel like I was so entwined with the business. And so with that being pulled away and that not being my hope anymore, it was like just a ripping apart of my internal. And my wife was worried about me, my kids, my friends, because they'd never seen me like that. Or I would just cry. And it was like, man, because before I could muster up the strength and just muscle through and suck it up. And at this point I couldn't. There was none of that, dude. Not only was there not gas in the tank, there wasn't fumes in the tank. And so then it was just a place of survival. It was where I found myself at, and trying to get help and just work through what is this, man? Because I'd never experienced a level of depression and anxiety like that there was just a sheer hopelessness. Everything was gray and dark.
Thanks for sharing that, Chris. And thanks for allowing yourself to be vulnerable. Looking back, what do you think were the key factors that led to your burnout?
So number one, man, I'm going to say that not knowing who I was in God and Jesus. We're going to talk a lot about this. I have no qualms with sharing my faith and experience I have in that. Not having that identity rooted in who God's created me to be is number one. Because until we know who we truly are, created with our innate value, made in the image of God, I think this is always going to be a temptation to be at a place where we are chasing and pursuing to fill that internal void. So that's a tough. And that led to me having holes in the soul, just not knowing who I was as a son of God and created, uniquely made with purpose. And so then it was like, man, I need to chase and achieve and acquire as much as I can, as fast as I can. But the problem came was, I remember we were having conversations, me and my former partner on Skype back in the day, like, man, dude, what would it be like if we could do like 20 grand a month in revenue, like 25 grand? Dude, that would be wild. Because at that point, coming from a lower middle class family, we didn't really have much money. And that was just like mind blowing to me to be able to have that kind of revenue. And within 6 months, we had our first 6-figure month in revenue. And it was just like, whoa, dude, like I'd never seen that much money one time. And that was pretty amazing. And I remember like that elation, it was so fascinating because it lasted like a day, right? To hit that level. And then it was like, okay, well, we did that. What's next? What's the next level? And unfortunately, the next month, it was like, we went to like 30 something in revenue. We're like, oh my God, it was a fluke. Like we're actually going to go broke. But ended up just growing a great 7-figure, then 8-figure business. But that was the thing, dude. Like it was just like another high after another high. Like it was never enough. The goalpost kept moving. And it just kept moving faster and faster. And I think that plus just ignoring my limits and pushing my body and my mind and my emotions past a healthy place. I didn't honor rest. I acted violently towards myself in chasing and striving this goalpost that never stood still. Always moved, was always higher. And thinking that money and achievement and acquisition and status was the thing that could fill me. It's like, okay, well, if it's not 100 a month, maybe it's 250 a month. Or, okay, we'll do that. If it's not 250 a month, it must be 500. Oh, well, it's not that. Maybe it's $1 million a month. Maybe it's $2 million a month. And I've had this question like, Chris, well, what if we haven't achieved like what you've achieved in that success? And my thought about that is like, when have you ever been satisfied with anything you've done, right? Like, it doesn't really matter the level, it's the condition and it's the motivation. So it could be like, man, what if I do 10,000 or 5,000 a month? You get to that point and you're like, well, what if I do 15 or 20, right? That thing, unless we become healthy individuals and know who we are, truly, our true selves, I think that's always going to be a temptation to continue to push and push and push and push for more and more and more because we have holes in the soul.
That's quite a journey, man. Share with me a bit about when walking away. I'm sure as people listen to your insights, they'll begin to see how tying self-worth to achievement is definitely a trap many fall into, and how breaking free from that requires a lot of shifting in perspective. So when you walked away from the business, what was it, June 22nd you mentioned?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I think so much of it is what we get our self-worth from, right? Again, this is identity conversation. And if we tie it to achievement, if we tie it to acquisition, if we tie it to anything external, that could be a recipe for disaster. Whether that thing's taken away, whether we lose it, whether we can't maintain it, whether something happens to us, right? Whatever the thing is, then we lose ourselves. And so that was to the place in June 2022 where I felt that I had lost myself. Like I barely, dude, I would get on a Zoom call for 30 minutes and be done for the rest of the day. I could not function. And so I knew I had to step away from the business. The business had been struggling for months at this point, where we went from a very profitable organization to some months losing money. And then on top of that, not having the energy, desire to continue that or to try to figure it out. There was no vision, completely empty. And so I was at a place of complete grief and heartbreak, because not only was I losing, I felt like my business, I lost myself, I lost my business partner, and it was just sheer heartbreak. And I felt completely alone and isolated. And so I took a 30-day sabbatical, June 2022. We brought in a new CEO, and man, I could barely function. I would just kind of just stumble around the house. I didn't touch my laptop for 3 months. I didn't end up going back to the business. I told the new CEO, I was like, man, I can't do it right now. Then that led to a conversation in September where we got a text from him, our general counsel. Hey guys, we only have 3 weeks of cash left in the business. We need to have a conversation. I had a feeling that it would come to that point. There was such a lost momentum in the business, and props to him for really working hard to try to figure things out. But it just seemed like that season was over. And that was one of the hardest things, because it's like a part of me died in that, which I'm very grateful for, because it's what needed to happen to get me to where I am now. And my wife, Missy, calls it, she says, it was the severe mercy of God that happened, because I use those things as a mask to hide my true self. I didn't want anybody to see who I, quote, truly was, because I wasn't secure in that person. And so having that shield, that mask taken away or losing it, required me to start the journey of asking those deep questions like, man, this didn't work. And I'm now broken, like that kintsugi, bowl, the Japanese art where they break the bowl or the cup or whatever, and they put it back together. And it's just more beautiful than it was before. I feel like that's the process I've gone through. Like I was shattered on the ground, dude. And it's just been a process of healing and rebuilding from a healthy identity, my true self, that can last and be sustained for the rest of my life.
Chris, it's so refreshing to hear the new perspective of being able to detach yourself from the business, knowing now that the business is not who you are, right? It's not part of your identity, but looking back at it, overcoming so much and still moving forward, man. Truly an inspiration. So guys, as you start to hear where the story leads, you'll start to recognize that walking away isn't failure.
Sometimes it's the first step towards feeling real relief and healing. Chris, let's touch briefly on the definition of success that you currently have that started to change during this period.
I'll start with number one. I think the definition of success is discovering who God has truly made you, your true self, and living from that place. Simply said. And I think from there, it's becoming a good steward of who God's made you. Your mind, your emotions, your spirit. And we're going to talk a lot about this stuff like purpose and vision and all these things. So we won't get too deep into that. But living from that place is awesome because you can live in a way that, what I'd say again, success is living from a place that's loving yourself, and that's taking care of yourself, your health, mentally, emotionally, physically, your family, your marriage, like all those being the priority before any kind of external thing, business, cars, investments, whatever. All those things are good and fine. But prioritizing your health, your family first, I think is success. And unfortunately, so much we see in our community as entrepreneurs is everything external is prioritized. And then you see broken people, broken families, broken marriages. And I'd say it's been a challenge, but I'm defining success more and more as the ability to say no. The things that don't align, saying no to more for the sake of more. And something that I'm falling in love with is really identifying those gifts that God's given me and starting to cultivate those. Even at the detriments, quotes, of more money, right? My value system has changed in regards to that. Again, not that money's bad, like none of those things are bad. But man, the enjoyment that I have in just sitting down and reading and writing and exploring ideas, like, oh, this is part of who God's made me to be, the gifts and the talents that he's given me. So like unearthing those things and allowing that time. It's like, okay, God, I think that you've given me these gifts. How do I cultivate them to love you and to love others well? And I think that's really, for me, a definition of success.
Chris, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us and for being so open, man.
Yep.
A big part that you touched on here was focusing on healthy boundaries. And those things stem from, do we know ourselves? And guys, this is something we're going to dive so much more into depth throughout these episodes to come. And whether you guys are seeing yourself through what Chris is sharing or you're feeling inspired by this transformation, we trust and believe that you'll walk away with a renewed sense of what success truly means and to be able to live from a place of health and purpose. Chris, what scripture would you like to leave us with here today?
Yeah, Matthew 16:26. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul? So that was definitely me. I feel like I had given my soul and lost so much. And now finding myself, man, I'm gaining so much. That'd be the consideration for you today. What are you sacrificing for the loss of your soul? Because another level is not going to be the thing that ultimately satisfies you. That satisfaction, I believe, can only come from God. Thanks for listening. Next episode, we're going to talk about the dark night of the soul. So it's going to be deep, and I'm going to share some more, open up some more about my journey. And if this resonates, our goal here is missional. This is not like we're trying to make money from this, obviously. We're not talking about sexy tactics on how to make $1 bazillion or anything like that. So share this with someone that can really use it and go rate it on whatever platform that you use. That'd be great.